So I think, as I mentioned before, it's that ability to achieve an outcome that I guess otherwise wouldn't be possible if you went down the route of adjudication or litigation. Um, and in the context of, I mean, as a firm, we predominantly act for the public sector almost exclusively so. And so for me, I really see it as you can achieve that arguably better outcome at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
And it kind of becomes a no-brainer in that sense. Why wouldn't you do it would be the question.
And welcome to our short video series, Meet the Mediator. In this series, we're getting to know the people behind the role. For background, Mediator Locator is a national mediation service connecting clients, law firms and organisations. Mediation is all we do. We're not a directory. We actually take the trouble to match you with the right mediator for your case. And this series is a great way to see the human side of mediation and why choosing the right mediator can make all the difference. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Rachel Murray-Smith of Sharp Pritchard. And going to start with asking the first question. Rachel, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your professional background and the path that led you to where you are today.
Yes, and I won't give a blow-by-blow because obviously we would be here all day. So I will give a bit of the potted version. So maybe unlike too many others, I started my legal career in a fairly traditional way. So I started as a legal assistant in a regional firm in Bristol where I'd been at university, working in a commercial property department, having done property and having literally no desire to actually practice in that particular area of law. No offence to anyone who does and who loves it. It just wasn't for me. But whilst being a legal assistant, I was continuing to apply for training contracts, and having had people in my family who'd worked in the public sector, I was very open to training contracts in the public sector, and it just so happened that one came up for a London local authority, and I thought that looks good, made the application and was successful, and so I trained at the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. I completed my 2 years training there, obviously covering seats that perhaps others don't cover in a more corporate or city firm setting, and then continued in the public sector for, I think it was 2 to 3 years in total that I spent. And when I qualified into contracts and procurement, which, as one can imagine, in the public sector covers a multitude of sins, and
Absolutely.
very interesting work indeed. And at the kind of tail end of my training contracts and also my sort of time in public sector was really the tail end of building schools for the future. And what I found was that I was not infrequently looking at construction contracts, and anyone who has worked in local government or works in local government now will know that there's fairly limited expertise when it comes to construction contracts and particularly construction disputes within in-house teams, just because of the way that they're structured, etc. So I sort of became the kind of default construction person, and was working on a couple of big projects with an external firm that happened to be Sharp Pritchard, and conversations happened and I moved across to Sharp Pritchard, and really from when I joined I just did more and more construction related work really, and that started as non-contentious construction and then moved into doing some contentious work through adjudication and such like, and also involved in mediations, and resulting in a few years ago thinking, well, wouldn't it be a good idea to become a qualified mediator? That seems like a helpful thing to do. So that's what I did, and very much enjoyed actually doing that training and that qualification. And really takes me to today, where I do predominantly non-contentious, but also some contentious work and obviously mediation work.
That's okay. That's great. So you obviously found an interest in mediation.
I did.
You mentioned that you got into it. What was the catalyst that made you decide to qualify as a mediator?
So I guess it was really feeling that the skills and qualifications that you would require as a mediator were things that I was relying on as part of my day-to-day work already. So that kind of at the core of it, that ability to negotiate and also to really get under the skin of an issue, which is really what mediation is about. It's that level of understanding of what are the drivers on each side and trying to find the commonality to reach a resolution. And so I just felt that actually there was a number of things that I was dealing with where I could see the benefit of that as a methodology. And so really felt that if I believed in it that much, that I should probably become a qualified mediator.
I
Really,
think that makes perfect sense.
I think that was probably the catalyst. Yeah.
Okay. And once you got into mediation and you started acting, what have you found most rewarding as a mediator?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's that it's that ability to kind of get parties to take a bit of a step back from some of the detail, because I mean, I'm sure this gets mentioned a lot, but people become very entrenched and lose sight of why they became entrenched in the first place, and it becomes such a focus on, well, I have to be right about this, as opposed to focusing on outcomes and what you actually want to achieve, and they lose sight of that as part of this more contentious, and obviously doing construction, it's a very litigious industry, but focusing on that outcomes or output based approach and that wider commercial context, and just seeing individuals relinquish that kind of previously entrenched position, I find particularly satisfying, because you can see your way. It's seeing the wood from the trees, isn't it? And actually saying there's a better output here if you can just let go of some of those other things. And I think that's probably the most rewarding part of it.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned that you do a lot of construction and public sector work. Are there any
Yes.
particular types of dispute that you enjoy mediating more than any others?
So I think it would have to be construction. As I say, it's a very litigious industry. People can be very combative in their communication style. I particularly like mediation where it relates to longer term contracts. So in a construction context, but I'm talking about term contracting, and just helping people find a way through to ensure that that long-term relationship is kind of salvaged and sustainable. They're probably sort of would be my favorite, if that's the right word.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's good. And you mentioned the sort of benefits of mediation, but what do you think is the biggest benefit if a party can be persuaded to mediate?
So I think, as I mentioned before, it's that ability to achieve an outcome that I guess otherwise wouldn't be possible if you went down the route of adjudication or litigation. And in the context of, I mean, as a firm, we predominantly act for the public sector almost exclusively so. And so for me, I really see it as you can achieve that arguably better outcome at a fraction of the cost, and it kind of becomes a no-brainer in that sense. Why wouldn't you do it would be the question.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense to me. And finally, if you're happy, are you able to give a quick comment about your experiences of working with Mediator Locator?
Yeah, so I think as is probably clear to anybody who's heard you speak, Stuart, obviously it's a real passion of yours, and that really drives everything that you do in respect of Mediator Locator. You've got a kind of deep-seated belief in the benefits of mediation that kind of sees its way through in terms of how Mediator Locator operates. And I think it's just the range and depth of expertise that you've managed to secure. It's kind of unrivaled in that sense. So yeah, I think it's that range and depth and just that focus and reverence for mediation.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And that brings us to the end of this short session. Thanks for watching this episode of Meet the Mediators. If you'd like to learn more about mediation or find the right mediator for your case, and in the construction context, that could well be Rachel, do please get in touch at mediatorlocator.com. Until next time, thank you very much and goodbye.